All right, guys. Welcome to the online lecture of my nutrition challenge. Um, I did a video recording. Unfortunately, there was a lot of people working out in the gym, so it was a little bit loud, and the quality wasn't that good. And since I didn't have a clicker for the PowerPoint, um, it was basically just a video of the screen. Anyway, so since you'll be able to hear my voice better this way, I figured it would be easier to go in this direction instead of sending out a video. Anyway, so here we go. Like I said, welcome to the 8-week macros nutrition challenge. Um, what are we trying to accomplish on our macros challenge? So, a couple things we're trying to accomplish. Number one, a better understanding and appreciation for nutrition, right? So what I mean by that is the science of nutrition, understanding how it works, how to manipulate it, um, right? Because when you look at it more as a science and the basics and the building blocks of how it really works, it really kind of makes it a lot easier to understand. And when you understand, like I always say, knowledge is power, right? Um, Along with that increased appreciation, we're also looking to build some and improve some skills with learning how to modify and accomplish any body weight goals that you choose. And again, like I said, understanding macros, how to manipulate them, and thinking about your nutrition in a totally different light, right? So a few people have said this, but it's the eating to live, not living to eat, right? Kind of understanding that food is fuel for life, not necessarily that food is a gratification or that you deserve delicious food or whatever have you, right? Maybe just a little change in the way you think about your foods. And lastly, we're trying to accomplish balance in our life, right? Because balance is good. Everything in balance, right? And so what I mean by that is, we're not going to be obsessive about this to a certain degree. We want to be able to cheat and have a good time and still live our lives while still being able to have a bit of a better understanding of nutrition and think about it in a different light, right? So what this is not a quick fix, okay? This isn't like the easy way to lose weight. It requires effort and it requires thinking and it requires some forethought. And, I can't guarantee that anyone will accomplish their body weight goals. That's just the reality of the matter. Because unless you're really willing to put in the work that's necessary to reach those goals, um, everything that I give you or all the tools that I give you are really just that, just tools. You kind of have to do the work, right? So you got to be able to work hard and so on and so forth. What else is this also not? This is not a body shaming program, right? It is not a program where we're trying to make people feel bad about who they are or what they look like or anything like that. We're trying to make each other feel better and trying to bring each other up around us, right? Um, and lastly, what this is not is a dietary restriction or a starvation program, right? I'm not going to tell you not to eat anything you don't want to eat. Realistically, you can do anything you want. That's what you choose to eat or restrict yourself from is entirely up to you, right? You got to understand that obviously there are some things probably that you shouldn't eat or shouldn't eat as often as some other things, lest, maybe then you don't get as much of or as profound of a change in what you're doing, right? And lastly, like I said, this is not a starvation program. So for some people, this might actually be more food than they're used to eating, certainly, or at least more volume of food that they're used to eating. Um, and that's probably a good thing, right? Good times. Next, what is required from you? Um, a commitment to learning, right? So we touched a little bit on this before with the what is this not the guarantee to accomplish your goals, right? And so all of this has to come from you, right? The commitment to learning, the commitment to improving and getting better, and understanding that the result that you get is entirely dependent on your own desire and your own willingness to do what is necessary to accomplish your goals, right? So that's pretty key. Remember all of those important things. Um, at the end of the day, I can't do the diet for you, or I can't, prep your meals or eat the meals for you or make the decisions for you. You have to be willing to do that all for yourself. So remember that when we get farther down the line. And then again, as I always say, if you listen to much of the things I say, consistency is key, right? Doing this on a consistent basis, more regularly than not, is going to yield a far more positive result than inconsistency. And as is always the same when we are, doing our workouts at the gym or whatever. Consistency in life and the things that you're trying to accomplish will yield a far more positive result overall than inconsistency. And that's really all I'm trying to tell you. And then as I keep saying, your own successes and failures in accomplishing your goals and with this program lie with you, and you got to own that, right? Some people are going to be willing to do more than others to accomplish their goals. That's pretty standard, I think, right? But understand that if you're not as successful as you want to be with this program, ultimately that success lies with you, and you need to be fully aware of that and own that. And I think when you own those kinds of things, you'll end up accomplishing more anyways, right? But yeah. Now to the boring stuff. Nutritional science. We'll go over the basics of what I call the pyramid of dietary importance, or the hierarchy of dietary importance, if you will. Right? And yeah, so here we go. So the pyramid of dietary importance, or hierarchy of dietary importance, right? It goes calories, right? So that's at the bottom, right? The bottom, or the most kind of the base of the hierarchy, is the calories in, calories out type deal, right? And then we go into breaking it down into what those calories consist of, like, the macros or the macronutrients. And then how are we splitting up our macros? How much are we eating at a certain times, and so on and so forth. And then the last one is the nutrient meal timing, is when are we eating our macros, and our specific ratios, and how is that impacting what we're doing. Okay, so first things first, calories. This, as I said before, is the base of all body weight change, is calories in versus calories out, right? So at the end of the day, you got to be either in calorie surplus, gain weight, so burning less or eating more calories than you burn. And if you want to be losing weight, ideally, really, you need to be in a calorie deficit where you're burning more calories than you're eating, right? Like I said, this is the basis of all change in diet. This isn't the only factor involved, but this is a starting point, right? And then from there we move to macros or macronutrients. So all food consists of 3 macros or macronutrients. The macros really are proteins, fats, and carbs. Okay. Each protein, fat, or carb can be broken down on its own into what I would call micronutrients, or amino acids and fatty acid chains and sugar chains and all those kinds of things. But we're not too concerned about that right now. We're just more concerned about, like I said, each of the three macros, right? The proteins, the fats, and the carbs. It is my own personal belief that proper nutrition should contain all 3 of the macros in most of the meals, as these are the building blocks of life, right? And if you remember before, I talked a little bit about having balance, and I think this is part of balance, is having meals in your life, in your diet, and in your day-to-day living that reflect that ideal, protein, fat, and carb macro ratios, and so on and so forth. Not just being like, oh, I'm all off carbs, or I don't eat any carbs, or whatever. I'm on the keto diet or something like that. Okay, so like I said, balance is key. Moving on, with our first macro is protein. Okay, and our goal with protein is to eat enough protein to support and build lean mass, but we're not eating in excess to promote fat gain, right? So that's overall really what we're after. And if some people are wondering why I needed to know your body weight to give you a macros recommendation, is really kind of because of this. Is to understand where you're at with your body weight, and then how many calories and how much protein you need to be eating in order to support lean mass. And then from there, right, we got protein has 4 calories per gram. Okay, so remember, fat has a lot more. We'll touch on fat in a sec, but 4 calories per gram. So if you had 20 grams of protein, you have consumed 80 calories, right? Ideally, we want to get complete lean protein, right? So I know not everyone is going to be a meat eater per se, but I mean, if you are, your life's going to be a lot easier in terms of getting a high protein intake. The reason being is because most plant-based proteins don't contain a full amino profile, and unless we're going to go through the process of trying to make sure we pair all our aminos up and we get all of the full amino profiles, etc., etc. Anyway, the long and the short of it is, eating meat is just an easier way to get all your protein in than going through the process of figuring it all out when you're doing plant-based. Which is why we suggest the lean proteins. However, obviously, there are some people out there who are going to go through this and do it by eating plant-based protein, which is totally cool too. Anyway, like I said, or like I didn't say this, but like the slide says, 30% of your daily calories should come from protein, in and around, maybe more, probably more for some people. Depends who it is. Okay. Anyway, here we go. Fat. Love fat. Delicious. Here we go. So, for some people, eating in this new manner that we were sort of new way will involve eating a good amount more fat than they might have been used to, for whatever reason. Probably because they either haven't been eating a lot, or they have it a lot in their in sauces, or because they just think it's bad for them or whatever, right? But it's not. Don't worry. Fat is not bad for you. It's good for you. Fat has 9 calories per the gram, which is it's more than double the amount of calories per gram, right? So that means that calories from fat are not that they're very dense, and so they don't have a lot of volume. So you don't need to eat a lot of them in order to get a lot of calories out of them, right? We want fats from oils, nuts, and seeds and nut butters, not from things like vegetable oil or canola oil, ideally, right? Except, olive oil, totally cool. But like I said, trying to stay away from the vegetable oils and stuff like that. And again, saturated fat, not the worst thing in the world, not the best, I suppose. Depends on how the animal is raised, I guess. But at the end of the day, totally understand that if you're going to eat a lot of things like beef, you're going to eat saturated fat. So it's not the end of the world, but it'll be in there, right? And like I said before, fat is not bad for you. It's good for you. Yummy. Okay? And 30% of daily calories should come from fat. Again, these numbers are somewhat variable. But this is the base recommendation that everyone's going to start with, and then we're going to modify from there, okay? Got the yawn here. Carbohydrates are not the devil, okay? Right? Exactly. They're not the devil. They get a bad rap a lot of the time. But if you're exercising and you're vigorously exerting yourself, excuse me, in your workouts, right? Then you're going to need to eat carbs. Realistically, you're going to have to eat them. Having a diet that's completely void of carbs is probably not a good thing ultimately over the course of time. Remember, I said we want to achieve balance, right? So over the course of time, having a diet that completely lacks carbs is probably not a way to live a good, proper, balanced life, right? Yes, that is the answer. Yes. Carbs support recovery from exercise by giving you readily available energy sources. Right? Glycogen in your muscles and so on and so forth are much better ways for you to be burning energy while you're exercising, and so you need to eat carbs in order to have that. Okay? Carbs will not make you fat, contrary to what people might say, if you're eating them at the right times. Right? We remember back to the hierarchy of dietary importance, right? Where we talk about calories in, calories out, the macros, the portions, the meal timing, right? Well, so meal timing, it matters, okay? You're going to notice this when you get your templates anyway. So, carbs have 4 calories per gram. Again, like I said, so you eat 20 grams of carbs, you had 80 calories, contrary to the 9 calories per gram for fats, which is a lot more dense. Anyway, I already said the stuff at the bottom there. We're after balance and sustainability, and like I said before, a diet void of carbs is probably not sustainable over the course of time. Moving on. Portions. So now we're moving down in the hierarchy of dietary importance here. Not all meals will have the same ratio of macronutrients, like the 30-30-40 ratios that I was just talking about there. Right? Because remember, the time in which you eat certain foods does play a role in how those foods are processed in your body. Okay, so meals closer to when you work out will have a greater percentage of carbohydrates in them versus meals where you're not in and around that workout time. Okay, and meals on days that you do not work out will have higher percentages of fat and protein in them versus a reduced amount of carbohydrates. Okay, that means that the portions and times at which you eat these meals do matter. They are important. Okay, which brings us to the last part of the dietary hierarchy, nutrient timing. Okay, portioning your meals and eating the appropriate meals at the appropriate times does make a difference, right? So we went over the portions of how you want to eat food, generally speaking, that has higher carbs in and around your workouts before, during, and after, right? And have those reduced carbohydrate meals on days when you're not working out and at times when you're not working out in general, right? So it's really not that complicated. The template that you're going to get will help take all of this into account for you, okay? All it takes is preparation and forethought, right? So it does take effort. Like I said to you before at the beginning of this whole little lecture, it takes preparation to prepare your week, to understand and know when you're going to be training, and as such, when you're going to be eating, and so on and so forth. I get that life does throw people curveballs, and sometimes you might not be able to get your meals in the way you wanted to correspond with when you work out because something messed up happened, and I get that. But as always, be as consistent as possible with this, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're after consistency. So the more consistently you're able to apply these principles, the more profound or the more drastic the change you're going to see is, right? Or at least you're going to see a change. And so that's important, right? I don't expect that 150 million% of the time you're always going to be on this, okay? But it does make a difference. So it's best to try than not try. Why is it important, right? Why is nutrient timing important? And the reason is because insulin. Insulin is the body's hormone to store. Insulin gets secreted from the pancreas, and it's secreted when your blood sugar goes up, right? So when you eat a lot of food, you're going to increase the blood sugar levels. When your body senses the blood sugar levels go up, your pancreas secretes insulin, which says store, store, store. And if you're storing at the wrong times, okay, sometimes if you're eating a lot of carbs or whatever, especially if you eat a lot of carbs at night, you might notice that you get stored as belly fat, right? A lot of sugar and stuff like that tends to store around the midline, especially if you eat at night. I don't know. That seems to be the case, right? And again, this is because of the insulin. This is because you're increasing your blood sugar really rapidly, and it's telling you to store like crazy, right? So controlling your insulin levels through proper nutrient timing means there are more ideal times to eat certain foods, like I said before. So that again is like, eating more carbohydrates around the time when you work out versus reducing that and increasing the fats and proteins when you're not working out, right? And then it also means that the more precise and consistent you are with this, the less need you will have to restrict your diet or your calories to see positive change, right? So what that really means is if you're good at timing when you eat the certain foods, you won't have to reduce the amount of calories or make as many drastic changes to your diet to change it, to change your body, right? Because you're playing the science of how the hormones work to your advantage instead of your disadvantage. People don't really realize that. But once you kind of realize that and you can start using the hormones to your advantage instead of your disadvantage, you won't need to restrict as much and you'll still get a change, and which is good because at the end of the day, if you can eat more food and still get a change, that's the most ideal, right? The less restriction we can have and the more normal we can be and still see positive change, the better off we'll all be. Okay, moving on. So now we're going to start talking about your recommendations for the macros challenge, right? So like I said a little bit earlier, your calorie or macro recommendation is based off of your own body weight or your nutritional goal, okay? So everyone's macros prescription will be different. Every single person that got one has a totally different number. that reflects their goals, their body weight, and kind of where they're at or how we're trying to get there with their nutrition. Okay. For some people, this is going to be a really drastic change to how that you're eating or how you compared to how you've eaten in the past, and that's probably a good thing, right? Not the worst thing in the world. And for some people, this is just an expansion on what you've already been doing, right? For some people that have already been doing the macros challenges or already been counting macros and stuff like that. Really all we're doing is providing structure to the macros with with your recommendation and your template, okay? And then, like I said before, remember, you don't eat to live, you don't live to eat, you eat to live, right? So food is fuel. It is a means to an end to keep you alive and help you accomplish your goals and fuel you forwards in the things that you need to do in your life, right? Anyways, so in order to get a good positive readout at the beginning to really understand what we're getting from your recommendation, it's ideal that you follow the recommendation that you have for at least 2 weeks at the very beginning, in order for us to draw some kind of conclusion from what's happening, right? If you're not going to follow it as it's written from the get-go, it's very hard to make a change because, at this point, what the recommendation that I'm giving you is to some degree a shot in the dark as to what may or may not be the best recommendation for you, right? But if you're not doing the recommendation as it's supposed to be done and following along with it, then how can we draw any kind of real conclusion about what's happening unless you're actually doing it, right? And that is kind of the overall point that I'm trying to make here. Right, so is this overwhelming? Right, so for some people, again, this might be overwhelming. This is a lot of information for some people, or a big change to the way they've thought about food in the past. And so what I would say is, if your recommendation is very far off from what you've been doing, start into this program gradually, right? So like if you've never counted anything at all, start out by trying to meet the macros and the calorie recommendations for the day, and then slowly work towards adding in the meal portions, right? So making sure your meals have certain portions of proteins, fats, and carbs, and then making sure you're eating those meals at the appropriate times. Okay, and again, you'll be able to see in your template what I mean by that. And again, because there'll be each time of day that you might work out has been accounted for, and it'll give you the options of how you should split up your meals for that time of day workout. Okay, so accuracy of measurement. Again, so as I've said before, and I said this at the beginning, how committed you yourself are to accomplishing your own goals really dictates how successful you will be, right? And so how committed you are to weighing and measuring your food and being accurate with the measurements to ensure that you are getting and meeting the recommendation is entirely up to you. But if you want the best result, that is what you have to do, right? Just listen to that for a second. If you want the best result, you will need to weigh and measure your food. Period. Okay? No one's saying you have to. You don't have to weigh and measure, but if you want the best result, you need to do that. Okay? This also means you will have to prepare properly portioned meals and in general, be prepared, right? Or have someone prepare the meals for you. Like I do, right? Because I'm not about spending my whole Sunday cooking and cleaning and crap like that. As it stands, I'm doing this instead. But this won't take me 3 hours the way cooking, cleaning, and prepping for the week will, or even in some cases more, right? So I personally, I buy pre-prepped meals that are all meant to certain portions that I've gone over with the company to make sure they're meeting those recommendations for me, so that when I eat my food, I'm getting the appropriate breakdown of proteins, fats, and carbs, and I can eat them and I have them readily available, and so on and so forth. Right? And so for some of you, this is a step way out of your comfort zone, and as like I said, it's way different from what you've been doing. And again, change is good, right? So, stepping out of your comfort zone and feeling uncomfortable is a time for growth. It's a time to get better and move forward with something different, right? You've got a clean slate from which to try something totally new, and totally different that you've been doing, and see how it works for you, okay? Nothing worth having ever came easily to anyone, so, anything in your life that you've ever had to work hard for is probably something you really wanted. And at the end of the day, like I said, your own success or failures with your body weight goals or the change goals you want to make lies with how hard you're willing to work and how far out of your own comfort zone you're willing to go to accomplish your goals. Okay? So we're getting towards the end here. Remember, using the template, you'll notice when you get it that at first glance the template looks complicated, but it's not. I promise it's really not that complicated. Okay? All it is, sorry about that. Computer almost died there. Anyways, where was I? I had to plug in for a second. Right, so like I was saying, at first glance the template's going to look complicated, but it's really not. I promise that that it's not that complicated. Okay. What you'll see with the template is that basically you'll have a recommendation for the days when you're not working out, and then you'll have a recommendation for the days that you are working out, and then you'll have subsequent recommendations for the time of day that your workout it will be occurring. Okay, and so right, there's like training first thing in the morning, training after one meal, training after two meals, training after three meals, right? And so wherever your workouts fall, like usually if you train at like 5 or 6 in the evening, that's probably like a training after 3 meals template, okay? In which case you'll find the training after 3 meals template in your template, and you reference back to you look through there and it'll tell you what meals you should be eating and what portions of proteins, fats, and carbs should go into those meals, and then you kind of follow that recommendation for the day. And then remember, what you'll realize also is that most people train at pretty similar times of day over the course of their week, right? So once you've done this for a week, it won't require as much planning and preparation to do, because you'll be doing the same things over and over again, right? And in the case that you are changing your schedule or something will be different during the week, all you need to do is refer back to the template, take a look at it, and say, okay, I'm going to go to the gym at a different time this week, so I'm going to have to eat in a different schedule, and this is what the schedule is, and do it like that, right? So for some people that might be like, instead of going at 6 this week, I'm going to go at 7. So at 7 a.m. So that's training first thing in the morning, and so and such, I'm going to adjust to the training and first thing in the morning template, right? And then, like I said, if you're consistent, once you get past the first week, you won't need to think about it too much. It'll just kind of happen. It'll be routine for you, right? And then preparation. So, like I always say, or like many people say, I'm not going to take credit for creating this lovely statement, but fail to prepare means prepare to fail, right? So if you're not prepared for your week or your day in terms of your meals and your thought processes of when you're working out as to when you're going to eat which meals, then realistically you're not setting yourself up for success, right? Because this part is probably one of the biggest keys to being successful with the program. And if you're one of the people that like just walks over to the fridge and is like, so what am I gonna have for lunch today, or what am I gonna have for dinner today? Like, this program will be very hard for you, because when you don't have food readily available to eat that's made portioned out in certain, with your recommendations in it, like again, you're regress, right? So maybe you need to take a step back and look at this and say, okay, am I going to just try and meet the calories and the macros and not worry about the meal portions and the meal timing? Or am I serious about this? Am I going to try and make a change and think about my nutrition in a totally different light? Because at the end of the day, it requires work to get the result you want, and you will have to think days in advance, like well in advance of what you're doing, in order to be really as successful as you could be with this program. Okay? So moving on to the most important slide that everyone's been waiting for, cheating. Cheating is always allowed, right? Cheating is always allowed. I said this in the actual lecture, and I'll say this again. We want balance in our life, right? So cheating will always be allowed. How much you choose to cheat on your own diet is entirely up to you. Um, right? Obviously, with the understanding that the more you choose to cheat versus the less you choose to cheat will yield a different result, right? People cheating more will probably not get as positive a result as the people who don't cheat as much. Um, that being said, I'm not sitting here saying you should never cheat because, like I said at the very beginning, we're after balance in our life and a life that's totally void of eating things that we like or that are restricting us from living our day-to-day normal life with the people that we love and our family and our friends is probably not that good. So I'm not about stuff like that, right? But remember, how badly do you want your result, and also how drastic is your result? Like how hard is your result to accomplish? This will also dictate how much you may or may not cheat, right? Because the more drastic or the greater change you're trying to make in a shorter period of time, the less room for error there really is, which means that you can't cheat as much. Um, my own personal recommendation for cheating is cheating about 10% of the time. So like it says right there, if you're eating 40 meals over the course of however many days, that means 4 of those 40 meals can be cheat meals, okay? Um, Plan your cheat meals around times you know it's going to be hard for you to meet your daily recommendations and then just move on from it, right? Like if you know you're going to have a work dinner or you know you have to go out and do something or a party or whatever, that's going to be your cheat meal and that's cool. Just own it. Go out, have your cheat meal, enjoy, don't worry about it, and then get back on track after it's done, right? Instead of like trying to count your cheat meal and figure out how many proteins and fats and carbs are in it, just say, fuck it. And eat it and enjoy it and move on and get back on schedule for the next one or whatever, right? I know for me, for me personally, my cheating goes usually from about Saturday evening through until about Sunday afternoon when I just kind of have a few consecutive meals that are off from what I normally do. And then I kind of bring it back around and get it back on track through Sunday evening, back into Monday morning and so on, right? And that kind of has been what works for me and it allows me to enjoy my life and still keep on track with the things that I'm trying to accomplish with what I'm eating, right? So just some food for thought in case you're kind of thinking about how you might schedule cheating and stuff like that. That's how I do it. Okay. Food recommendations. Your diet template will have in it a list of recommended foods. Okay, it gives you the list of lean proteins that are ideal. It'll talk to you about vegetables, about healthy carbs, healthy fats, all those kinds of things. Obviously, you don't have to stick to the recommended foods, but and you can modify it to suit your own taste buds. But as is the case with a lot of this, the farther you stray from the template or the farther you stray from the recommended foods, it stands to reason that the less positive your resultant change will be because of that stray, right? So try and stick to it as best you can and then see what that does for you. Okay, so putting it all together, right? We've been putting it all together all the way along, but right, remember our hierarchy of dietary importance, right? The calories, the macros, the portions, and the meal timing. And so this might be very drastic change for a lot of people, and that's great. Change is good. Being uncomfortable and out of your comfort zone and adapting to it makes you a better person. Um, if this is overwhelming, then start at the very bottom of the hierarchy of dietary importance, right? And start by meeting your calorie and macros recommendations, and then work towards figuring out how you're going to plan and portion out your meals and prep your foods so that you can have those meals readily available so that you can eat them at the recommended times, etc., right? And then lastly, the most positive results will come from those who are willing to do and what is necessary and follow the template as closely to how it's written, and make as few changes to it as possible. Um, that's just the reality of the matter, right? Nothing against no one's knocking the people who have a different lifestyle or that have a lot of factors that can't be controlled in their life. But at the end of the day, the people who can stick to eating in this strategy as closely to how it's written will ultimately achieve the best result. Okay? So, which brings us to the next part, which is weighing yourself. You need to do this. I know it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but ultimately, we need to know what's happening with your body weight. So, you should be able to see a consistent trend in the direction that you're trying to go over the course of time, right? I would say weigh yourself about 3 times a week under the same conditions each time and take that average, right? And over the course of multiple weeks, we need to be seeing consistent changes, okay, or consistent trend in the direction we're trying to go, right? So like if you were to graph it, you would see an upward or a downward trend, or it would be staying consistent depending on what your goals are. So if you have 3 consecutive measurements that are not in line with your body weight goal, and this is of course after your initial 2 weeks, right? You still have to start with 2 weeks following the template and just following it, regardless of what's happening to you, and then we'll adjust after that. Okay. So after that point, if you're getting 3 consecutive measurements that are not in line with your goal, then send me a message and we'll adjust you to we'll change it up so that we get you going in the right direction again. Okay. So remember, lastly, not weighing consistently or not following the recommendation is not a reason to change the numbers. Okay? So if you're not doing it as it's intended to be done, how can we really make any kind of conclusion about what the numbers are actually giving you? And the answer is none. So you can't change them, right? Which is why all of the accuracies and the consistency is all important if you really want to know what the numbers are giving you, right? If you just kind of want to do it, I mean that's cool, but like ultimately, the more precise and the more consistent, and making sure you weigh at the right times and the consistent times, and following along with the recommendations as best you can, ultimately will yield you better results, right? And there can be lots of reasons why your weight may or may not be going in the right direction. But again, we need to eliminate the fact that it's not, that it's not the numbers. And if you're not doing stuff, to help me, then how can I help you? That's ultimately what it comes down to, right? Progress pictures. So ultimately, the main reason for doing this is sometimes your body might not be gaining or losing weight, but you can still be making change to it, right? And so this is really why you need to take progress pictures. I would suggest you take one from the front, one from the side. Take them in whatever clothes makes you feel comfortable, I guess. Whatever that is. This is a judgment-free zone, right? So no one cares. But I know some people are still uncomfortable, and I totally get that. So take them in whatever clothes makes you feel comfortable, keeping in mind that ultimately, if you want to show that you've made more change, you got to see more stuff. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, take pictures at 2-week intervals and monitor so that you can monitor the visual changes that are happening to you. And this is especially important for the people who are doing the body comp change more so than they're trying to lose weight or gain weight, right? Right. And lastly, winner takes the cake. Okay. Winner of this whole thing takes the cake. So if you don't send me progress pictures, you can't really be included in this, right? So 1 free month membership to the person who has the best transformation as it relates to their goal, judged by me. Realistically, all I really need for this is the picture at the very beginning and at the very end. I don't need the ones in the middle. But if you want to win that free month, you gotta send me those pics. Sorry if that makes you feel uncomfortable, but that's just the way it is, right? I want everyone to be successful. I wish you all nothing but the best of success in this program, and of course, I will be available for you to help, as a resource for help as you need it as we go through all of this. Okay? I think that's it for this program or for the lecture today. We won't really have any questions because this is still on screencast, and unfortunately the people listening to this probably were not at the lecture at the gym, and as such they don't get the question part because there's no questions that anyone's asking me right now. Okay, that's it, right? Okay, so best of luck, everybody. I wish you all the best of success, and I hope that you're willing to do what it takes to accomplish the goals that you've set for yourself. Okay, have a good one. Bye.